Okay guys, welcome back. So we continue with part 3 in chapter 13, more on the cloud workload overview, because last chapter we discussed about the factors in considering the deployment model, right? In that particular factors also we already jump to the sum of workload type. So here we will go for in details actually about the workload itself in cloud. So which workload suitable for specific deployment model and so on. So we'll discuss in detail. And then you will be understanding workload that are not appropriate for cloud, which actually appropriate for on-premise or on virtualization or and so on. So what is workload actually? In computer world, the workload is the amount of processing that the computer has been given to do at given time. Because we have processor, right? The processor are measured in gigahertz, right? The memory also utilized in that particular things. So the workload consists of some amount of application programming running in the computer and usually some number of users connected to and interacting with the numbers with the computer application. If let's say one server hosts one application and then there are multiple users, then the workload for one user will calculate and multiply by the numbers of users, so that you can consider the workload numbers. Okay, the notation of workload is central to cloud computing. Mainly, a workload is a discrete capability or amount of work you like to run on cloud as instance. For example, serving up a website or running a Hadoop nodes are classic example of workload. So different application normally different level of workload, so you also require different type of machine or instance in cloud. So in characterizing the workload, there are 4 parameters we can use: mission criticality of the workload, data and transaction security requirement, availability requirement, and compliance and audit requirement. So from this parameter, so we can classify or characterize the workload. Is it critical or not? Is it require high performance or high security or high compliant or not? Okay. So normally factors that influence the cloud workload are more on these 2 factors. Okay. The environment and delivery model. The environment to which the workload belong, and then delivery model that is more suitable for the workload. Okay, the environment for workload determines the deployment model of the target cloud, either public, private, or hybrid, based on the environment, and also the deployment model will be identified. The most suitable workload for the cloud normally the development and test workload, because it's not the permanent workload which we didn't require to predict, and also not long period of time which require to pay more, right? This is the good things, development and test workload. So organization going in for cloud transformation initiative typically chooses to begin the transition with development and test workload first. There are multiple reasons why this happens, because the test and development workload are less critical and have less stringent response requirement. So if let's say the development and test workload are good enough in cloud environment, then you can test for another type of workload. Because when we test this development and test workload in the cloud environment, is not affect your production, so it's less critical. Anything happen to that particular environment is not affect your business directly. So the user for development test workload normally are internal user, specifically the development and test team. It's not the end user but the development and the test team. This team double up a test user for dev test cloud. let's say they have the user to test. Okay, all problem within the initial setup and configuration of the cloud are internally reported only and resolved with minimal impact to the business because this is internal user. If anything happen, they can report to the admin or management without going through the public environment. So your reputation is still okay, and then not affect also your business. So then you can improvise it to ensure that later for other deployment will be smoothly and better. And then the development test environment also allow for regression testing of the cloud setup. Before you deploy for production, you can try first, is it the setup good enough and can be relied on, then it's a good thing. The cloud setup under test can be tested against varying tailor-made workload. This is not possible for production system because if you test in the production system, the system maybe will be affected, it will be downgrade, the performance overhead is there. In the worst case scenario, the system will be shut down, will be down. It's not good when you want to run the testing in the various testing in the production system. Okay, this is for public only. For for a private cloud solution, non-production workload can be placed preferably on public. Right. However, the private cloud solution is preferred in certain cases, especially for non-production. We are using public, but still can be in private. If let's say your non-production also hosted some or store some data which belong to national data, which required to comply with certain standard or compliant, will not allow your data hosted outside, then your private still can be considered. If the customer had been running a workload on in-house IT infrastructure, the organization may want to use private cloud setup for the development test because they still have, for example, extra resources to be used. If not utilized, it's not worth. It's not. It's wasting your company resources. Then why not? They just hosted the test, the development and test environment in private. Can be. This allows for more control on the design of the cloud solution. However, over time, the customer will choose to move the dev test workload to public cloud to accommodate the increasing production workload requirement. Because in cloud, normally you can do everything there, include the development, testing, debugging, and also deployment directly with the platform as a service solution. Okay, for a new company with no existing in-house setup, then a public cloud is the best solution. See here, the keyword with no existing for hosting initial development test workload. Because this one, if already running and got IT infrastructure, existing IT infra, then you can start with private. But if new company, startup company, you go directly to the public cloud. Because public cloud can avoid initial capital issue involved setting up the infrastructure. The capex will be nearly to zero. No need to buy, need to rent, right? Capex and OPEX for the space, building, and so on. Okay, now we see the type of workloads in cloud. First is temporary workload, like we discussed earlier. Development and test, and then mission critical production workload, mixed workload, and industry specific cloud workload. Okay, first we moving to temporary. Normally temporary is non-production workload. Prefer place in public cloud because we only use for specific time period, not for permanent. Temporary only. Example of temporary workload here: requirement of additional capacity to meet the compute need of Olympic or World Cup cricket. Normally Olympic, for example, Olympic 2 weeks. World Cup cricket 1 week, for example. Right. So that's not permanent. 1 month lah, at least 3 weeks or 1 month. Only temporary. These are events that occur once in 4 years. A new agency may require additional server during the World Cup, but will not have any use for them after the game are over. This is a classic case of temporary workload. Similarly, when um, we hosting, for example, last time we hosting the Commonwealth game in 1998, if I'm not mistaken. So we developed a lot of infrastructure, stadium, um, the cycle, velodrome, and many more. But after the event, it's not fully utilized. They can utilize, but not fully utilized. So it's worth wasting our resources. Similarly with the server, right? If you want to use only for 3 weeks, why not you rent only, pay for use, no need to buy, because after you buy, it's not utilized, it's wasting, right? Unless you can sell it second hand, but second hand price would be lower, right? And then another example, national population survey in that done once in a decade. For example, in Malaysia we call it banci, right? uh, from the statistic, I think the statistic department, Malaysia, right? National population survey. During the survey, additional compute capacity is required for data entry and processing of the survey data. Okay, I think last time they already started the banci or the survey one online. So during that particular time, maybe 2 months, for 2 months or 3 months, only that particular server are running or having workload or high workload. Once the survey is over, the compute capacity will no longer be required. So instead of purchasing additional hardware to meet the temporary demand, government may choose to hire compute server on public cloud for the duration of the survey. Maybe Malaysian government, they rent infrastructure from local cloud service provider which hosted locally. And then the second type of workload can consider as mission critical production workload. Mission critical and production workload. Normally, it's involved production. If temporary, normally not a mission critical lah. The criticality of workload can be judged by the impact it has on the business. An organization may suffer huge losses and may suffer irreversible damage to its brand, reputation, if a critical workload fails to perform and suffer from loss of data. So very critical, that means the good will affect a big impact to your business. Suffer huge of losses in terms of money or damage in terms of brand. When this happen, cannot be reversed again, right? Everyone will remember it, then your customer trust will be damaged as well. So mission critical workload has requirement that are supersede of all the requirement put together. So we need to ensure your mission critical workload should hosted in this particular infrastructure. Trust, reliability, availability, and security need to be reliable, need to be available, highly available, and good protection in terms of security, so that you can continue your business in a good and smooth environment. So, but you need to invest more on that particular infrastructure. So typically, the most critical workload are not more than 20% of entire workload put together. Maybe in the business environment, they have multiple department, but one or two department only hosted this mission critical or production workload. That's why they put as a 20%, not more. Other is not mission critical, maybe can be compromised. The RPO, RTO can be not in real time, not zero. Disaster recovery and backup workload are important part of critical production workload. Why? Because without disaster recovery and backup workload, if anything happen to the primary or production system, then your business will be suffer from the loss because you cannot continue the business. So with the disaster recovery or backup solution, so once your production system is down, you can transfer the workload into your disaster recovery site, your redundant component, replicate component, your replica of your database, so everything can be worked and take over the primary workload data center or workload task. Then once the primary data center or system go back to normal, then they will return back to that particular primary data center. They call it failback. Fail over and failback. Failback from primary data center into disaster site. And then failback from disaster recovery site to the primary site again. So private cloud are best suited to run mission critical production workload because this private cloud may be on or off premise, internally or externally managed. However, the organization that own the workload has complete control on the private cloud. So if you have private cloud, easier for you to setting up, can customize your needs based on this. Either you want to put 0 RPO, RTO, multi data center or cross data center, AR and so on. So this is the good part when talk about private cloud. Now, in public you can do it, but you have less control over the customization. Advantage: private cloud provide this following advantage for mission critical workload. Can be custom built, as I said before, customized to suit the workload requirement. Advanced feature: high availability, disaster tolerant and backup recovery can be custom built into private cloud. Because in your public cloud they have the solution, but you cannot customize. You just use the package that they have, especially when you running the proprietary application which requires specific software and hardware to be managed. Like Oracle, they have their own replication software, only can work with engine, also agent. Okay, another advantage of private cloud for mission critical workload, actually easy to comply with existing compliant like PCI DSS, HIPAA, ISO and others. Easy to comply because we have more control, but cost you need to pay for that will be higher, right? And then robust data and transaction security in the cloud is built in-house. Robust means you can customize, you can do whatever you want. However, what I said before, the cost associated with that will be higher because you need to do by yourself, you need to manage by yourself, maintain by yourself. Okay, compared to public cloud, but it's more robust because you can customize it. And now we see the example of mission critical workload. Stock exchange enable trading of stock through a trading platform which accessible millions of traders. To ensure smooth operation of stock exchange is handling billion of transactions per second. You see, in US, Hong Kong, right, Japan, their stock exchange are very active. So the trading application workload must be placed on reliable, secure and high available server. They can have multiple server, for example, 3 or 4 server. Then the workload will be balanced by the load balancer, right? This is only possible if the stock exchange has a complete control over the stock exchange server or the cloud hosting this server. A public cloud would not be able to meet SLA, security and compliance requirement of this workload. Maybe lah, but now you can try to see any public cloud are able to do that. Then you can have another option, but you need to see the compliance requirement as well. Another example, e-commerce website that accept credit card as payment option. The e-commerce server must comply with PCI DSS (Payment Card Industry Data Security Standard) to be able to transact using credit card or to store credit card data. This is another best use cases for private cloud. However, now most of the e-commerce also there you can use public with the certain security protection like the API security, DLP, data leak protection, and many more. Although public is better, but although private is better for that particular workload, but still can be run in public, no problem. Depend on your policy and your requirement. Okay, another type of workload, they call it mixed workload. Consider organization has mixed workload of production and non-production server. So the non-production workload primarily comprised of development test server, and then the production normally for their business. Okay, the customer would want to place a part of workload on the private cloud for compliance, security, and criticality reason, and part of workload the public cloud. Then we can consider hybrid cloud for mixed workload. So the customer want to have an option moving the workload between the private and public cloud based on load. For example, customer may want to move the non-production workload back to private cloud from public cloud to save on the subscription cost. This aspect of it is provided by hybrid cloud, best for both workload. So it can be flexible. You want to put it in private, you can get it back based on your needs. Okay. So production only workload more suitable for hybrid cloud. Consider organization that maintain email collaboration server to provide email service to employees, contractors, and partners. The use case for hybrid could be to use the private cloud to maintain mailbox for employees for security reasons. Although they are one server or one service, we call it email service, but different user. Maintain mailbox for employee, they use private because security and compliance requirement. But for mailbox for contractor and channel partner can go for public. Okay, you see, this is also possible. However, to balance the workload for security or any other reason, if customer wish to move all the mailbox back to the private, the hybrid cloud provide an automated mechanism to achieve the migration. Although they already put some in public, some in private, but when they want to take back all together and hosted in private, it can be done. They have automated mechanism in hybrid environment. Hybrid cloud use an external service provider for the public portion of the cloud. Before organization set up a hybrid cloud, SLA for availability must be discussed with the cloud service provider to ensure a good integration and higher availability for service hosted on hybrid cloud. So we need a win-win situation between you as customer. You have your own requirement and see how your cloud service provider capability, because not every cloud service provider has similar capability. Well known like AWS, Google, Microsoft, maybe they have better option, but the local one normally they have a limited capability. Example of this industry specific workload: e-commerce generally use credit card to process payment. It's important part of building a payment infrastructure is compliant to PCI DSS standard. So private cloud solutions serve best to comply with that. For healthcare, also got different compliance requirement or regulation. For example, HIPAA, Health and Insurance Protection, right? So also private cloud the best for the healthcare domain. And then education sector, sharing is important for part. So information cloud are built to distribute information like your collaboration tools, our Microsoft Team, right? Our Canvas classes, collaboration, right? Also, the security is lesser concern on the education sector. This is what they claim to. So that public cloud is more suitable for education service application like LMS. They may be provide as PaaS mode for the user. For example, Moodle. Moodle is PaaS, platform as a service. But what we use here, Canvas, and last time we using Blackboard. They are offering it as software as a service, so a bit different, but still can be hosted in public environment. Easy for specific one, public and private. But what are the workload not suitable for public cloud? Normally regarding the workload that require specific regulatory or standard requirement like PCI DSS, HIPAA, or ISO, CSA, and many more, right? Best suit for private cloud. However, nowadays, like I said before, I give you example last time, we have the public cloud compliant, right? For example here, AWS compliant. Okay. So they already comply with the specific amount, specific type of standard requirement. ISO, Information Security Management System, ISO, ISMS, PCI DSS, Security Operations Center, Cloud Security Alliance. So this actually the global standard that need to be comply with specific service provider. If you require, your business required to comply, then when you use this, actually your data center or your infrastructure can be comply. America, they got more lah over here. NIS, HIPAA, right? This just example. Asia Pacific. So Malaysia not many lah. Malaysia only more on the PDPA. Okay, this is the compliant requirement. Malaysia Data Privacy Protection Act, PDPA. Others they got others lah. Now HIPAA, I think the name here, PH, Personal Health Information Privacy and Access. They put P, personal. Last time Health Information Privacy and Access Act. Because US is not centralized. They not has a centralized regulation because each state or province they have their own management or their own compliance requirement. Like Ontario different, New Brunswick different, right? So they did British Columbia different. So they have their own regulation. So it's not suitable, they said, in public cloud. But nowadays, public cloud have been provided this. So option is on you. Workload that are require high security and which cannot rely on third-party provider, also not suitable for public. Workload that require custom and stringent implementation of high availability, disaster tolerant, backup recovery, also should be put in private. But if your public cloud can provide this, no issue. Workload that make undue assumption on the OS or underlying hardware will not run on public cloud. Public cloud may use open standard. If very custom, very proprietary and legacy system, a bit difficult to be supported by public cloud. Hence, all proprietary or legacy application not easy to public. So public cloud not ensure continuity of data and data retention over long period of time. But currently, AWS and Google, they got their own data retention policy that it can be used based on your data life cycle. They can be automatically store for you. Okay. Next, we see about the workload that not suitable for private cloud. Normally, legacy workload that may not be very well supported on private cloud. However, in most cases, possible to accumulate legacy workload by running this in emulated mode over new hardware. Can be, okay, because it's not standard, but you can customize because you are in private one. But small workload that does not justify a full implementation of private cloud, so you just put in public lah, right? Small workload, which means it's temporary, it's not consistent, not constant, only used for specific amount of data, because although small workload, you still require data center or a server room to host, right? The network infrastructure must be there, the cooling system, the space is not worth in terms of capex, right? Because private cloud requires significant capex, which go into purchasing hardware, cloud stack license, and other software, not meet the ROI expectation of the organization. So your return on investment not fulfill this, because for example, your value of the workload are very low, but you need to pay more for the capex. So your investment in the capex is not well suited. So better hosted in public. And then geographically distributed data center and workload pose challenge to private cloud architecture and its current state. Similarly, if you have also the user from all over the world, you need to have also distributed data center. It's not good for private cloud architecture. Better you hosted your application in public, which has also different region all over the world, so you can distribute their workload or server multiple instance in multi-region environment. If you put in your own data center, so there may be delay for other user that located long distance from your data center. Then a desktop as a service workload, catering to geographically dispersed user with bandwidth constraint, put heavy dependency on network bandwidth and network link reliability. This kind of workload may suffer from bad response time. If you hosted desktop utilization and then your user scattered all over the world, is not good in public or in private, because you put only in one location. So you can try to put it or host it in public environment, which you can co-location in multi-region or multi-availability zone. Okay, this workload made possible by cloud may not yet be ready for migration. This is sensitive data, highly customized workload, not yet virtualized, complex process, regulation sensitive, like this isolated workload may, and so on. Okay, it's not ready. Ready for cloud, there are more collaborative, medical imaging, financial risk, which have been offered widely in public environment. Then you can go for public and also cloud, public cloud lah, right? Public or private, and this one more on traditional IT infrastructure. Okay, I think that's all for the last chapter. So see you